A day that will live in infamy. No matter which side you were on in the war, no matter where you lived, grew up, no matter where you were living on the globe. The eruption of World War II was a truly global conflict, even more so than World War I had been. Almost impossible to be anywhere that didn't know about it, wasn't impacted in some way or fashion by it. In 1970, the film Tora, Tora, Tora attempts to tell the story of the outbreak of those hostilities, at least as they are known to the general public, bringing out all sorts of details and information together with a huge ensemble cast, both for the Japanese and the Americans in the film 1970, Tora, Tora, Tora. Tora, 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 the title is based on the code phrase which was meant to indicate when transmitted by the Japanese back to their carrier fleet that they had achieved the element of surprise over Pearl Harbor. Now, this is a story that's been told a million times. It was told before 1970. It's been told after 1970. What's really interesting about Tora, Tora, Tora is their attempt to get at all aspects of this, not the elaborate conspiracies of what did the president know or not know, or did he plan it, or did he look the other way, but all of these things are sort of just in there. You get what is much more like a documentary. It felt, my generation, it felt to me like Unsolved Mysteries, where you had the reenactment with actors and actresses of events that happened. We have this 2.5-hour, roughly epic production of the entire story, but none of the great, and there's a ton of famous actors and every Asian they could find in Hollywood to be the Japanese, having the Japanese speak their native tongue and giving us subtitles. All of this move towards authenticity means very few individuals get a lot of screen time. I think the planes in the sky get more screen time than any specific human actor. Nevertheless, it does this good job of covering everything you've ever heard. I'm not an expert on World War II, certainly not in the Pacific. I couldn't attest to that. But I hear bits and pieces over the years in various different books and various different documentaries. Boy, everything is crammed into this movie. From the radar outpost, was it in the right spot? Was it on at the right time? Does it report? Yes. Do they get the right conclusion from it? No. The attack of the mini sub, I mean, you name it, all of the details of how they're transcribing the Japanese coded transmissions, whether or not the president actually gets it, whether or not it gets to him in a way that they can make sense of it. There's a whole slew of mess. If there is one message that is historically conveyed well in the film, it's all of the things that we do that we take for granted or that we don't get quite right. And it doesn't take much within the chain of information, within the chain of duty, to be like, darn it, we're 5 minutes past shift, we're going to lunch. Little things that you expect to be no problem. Going riding on a Sunday afternoon, going to church on a Sunday morning, things that you're not thinking of in terms of, and maybe you should be, but you aren't, or some of you are, but not everyone's getting the message. It really is a beautifully put forward poetry of human errors and mistakes. They do show more of a dimension, multi-dimensional character to the Japanese than usually has been done in American films, letting them speak their native language, giving more of a dimension of Yamamoto and his concerns over the war, things we've heard about in documentaries or read about in books, getting a little bit of that background, but not really a lot. So there's more of a human side put to the Japanese, but on the other hand, it's not a complete picture. And so it kind of draws you into this idea that it's giving you an historical snapshot. And we get a really good detailed historical snapshot of all the Americans at the various levels, the people getting the messages. Are they getting the right idea? Are they making the right preparations? But the Japanese, though they're made a little more human than a lot of the films of the time or earlier, we don't really get a lot of their side of the conflict whatsoever. But as a film and being so epically long, the best I can say is it was a really interesting film to watch. I can't say that it had a lot of entertainment value, rather historical value, because as I say, it's a lot of big name actors and they all do a fine job in the things where they're being dramatic or they're whatever they're doing, but they don't have a ton of screen time. It's not really about any of those people. There's all of them thrown in there to give you a broad picture. And it does feel very much like a historical reenactment for a show like Unsolved Mysteries, except there's no narrator commenting. So we get these from scene to scene to scene to get the facts as they unfold, but that's about it. Nevertheless, it's for a film of its time, epically long, detailed, a lot of considering the practical effects that had to be used, possibly real war footage. I hadn't looked that up, but possibly real combat footage sometimes would get touched up and thrown into something. But it really comes out as a very complete historical snapshot. Tora, Tora, Tora. It was included with YouTube Premium. I checked it out. If you've seen it, let me know what you think. Go check it out. See how you like it.